Thank you very much for the introduction, Mila. And so here we are, and I'm very grateful to be talking about this particular topic about how to sell your ideas in the boardroom. We're going to look at the neuroscience of what actually happens in someone's brain when they make the decision to buy, and then we're going to look at what does this mean to your actual conversation. And I wanted to start with one piece of research that comes from Yale, and it applies to us women in terms of what we might be able to experience in the boardroom. And I'm just curious if this has been your experience. So the research from Yale shows that, and this was specifically, if you're in the world of tech, this research is specifically from several tech companies that they followed, and that is that men speak 75% of the meeting time. And so my question for you is, and if you can share in the chat, have you found this to be true in the meetings that you attend? All right. So if you can share in the chat as to whether that's your experience or not, and if you can just put a Y for yes, and if you say no, yes, we've got lots of Ys, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing. And so as we go into this, what I'd love for you to be, yes, with an exclamation mark, I love it. All right. Part of it for us is to recognize as we go into the boardroom, there's several pieces involved that work in our favor. And this is actually one of them that works in our favor, as well as we're going to look at the neuroscience as I shared. And reminds me of, I'm just sharing, Melissa, your comment, men also greatly outnumber women in most of my tech meetings, so not surprising. Great. And what we're going to look at is specifically how do you sell in a room. I've been in many industries where I'm the only female in the room, and it ends up, we'll see as we get into this. I think you'll love how this turns out. So I was arriving to deliver a presentation for a group of CEOs, and when I arrived, I met the organizer who's on the right, and he was meeting with the tech person who was helping with the audio visual. And then he came over and we had a chat, and he said, I just have to tell you, Peri, I already know that I like you. And I went, how do you know that you already like me? I mean, we did speak a few times on the phone beforehand, but how could he be so certain? And he said, because I checked you out. I said, what do you mean? And he took me to his computer and he showed me a technology that allowed him, as he showed me, a description of who I was and what's important to me. And I must say it was accurate to like 100% accurate in terms of who I was and what's important to me. And he said, by the way, also, this allows us to compare two individuals to see how well we get along. And don't tell my wife, but I did a comparison between you and I also compared my wife and I. He said, you and I are supposed to get along a lot better than my wife and I. And I'll share with you what this technology is. There's things like this that can really help us as we're going in to present to an organization, to the boardroom, or to senior execs. So this can apply what I'm sharing with you today, whether it's senior execs, executives, individuals in a room that you're presenting. So let's say this is you, all right? And that you know that you are going to be having a meeting with an individual, let's say the CFO of the organization, who just so happens to be male, and that's what you've been told so far. But they won't let you meet with him. But you've also discovered that there's a few other people who are going to be in the meeting as well, who are senior execs too. But you've also been told that you're not able to speak with any of them. What do you do? And this is a scenario we're going to look at. You typically will have what I'm going to refer to as a gatekeeper, an individual who will be providing you with information, things of that nature, and be letting you know about that meeting. And let me know if this is similar or has parallels to the experiences that you have in terms of dynamic. I chose an example that I thought would be universal. Just put a Y if this applies for you in your world. And it doesn't have to be senior execs. It can be anybody with within the organization. And I know we're looking at both inside of a company and looking inside, so it's internal or external to the organization. And we're going to be looking specifically at that. So we have 4 things that we're going to be looking at. First is going to be about getting the meeting. Next is going to be about how do you influence that meeting. And then third will be preparing for that meeting. And then finally 4 is during that meeting and what do you do? And we're going to be looking at each one of these very specifically so that you know what to expect, all right, and how to manage it. So let's go through for getting the meeting first. And I'd like to start with a piece of research which I think will help you feel, how can we put it, more at ease. And at the same time, we're going to test the research because I want not just to take the research for research's sake, but to actually say, does it work, does it not? So here's the research, the first piece, and it comes from multiple sources, that much of people's buying decisions are complete before they even speak with the salesperson. So for those of you who like to take notes, I'll put this up on the screen. So much of clients' buying decisions are complete before they even speak with you. And I think that's important for us to recognize that we're not starting at 0 point when we're going to present in the boardroom. And we're going to look at where are people in their buying decision and what does that mean to what it is that you do in order to help them, all right? And so let's just define where they are in their buying decision. I call this the spectrum of buying. So if they're at 25%, that means that they're browsing, they are most likely not going to buy, 75% most likely not going to buy, 25% possibly, all right? 50% meaning that they're window shopping, they could buy or not buy, but they're sitting on that fence, okay? I'll call that window shopping. And then we have the 75%ers, which means that they know they're going to buy something, they just don't know which product or service, okay? And then finally, 100%, meaning that they know they're going to buy and they know exactly which product, which is like my husband, when he goes to buy technology, I like to watch him from the outside of the store, and I watch him, he goes in, he has a very brief conversation with the salesperson, they go into the back, bring out a box, my husband gives him the credit card, and before you know it, less than 5 minutes, my husband is out the door with the product in hand. And that's your 100%ers, it's a done deal. So the spectrum of buying, as I've just walked you through, looks like this, all right? And so if I was to look at, let's say, the jacket that I'm wearing, and the suit actually, when I went to go buy this suit, I knew that I wanted a certain quality. So that let me know which store I was going to go to, but I was not sure which exact one I was going to buy. So I knew I was going to buy, but I didn't know exactly which product, all right? And so was I at 25%, 50%, 100% of my buying decision complete? No, I was on a mission. I was at 75% of my buying decision complete, meaning that I knew I was going to buy something that day. I just didn't know which one. All right. And the job of the salesperson was to help me with the remainder of that buying decision from 75 to 100%. So I'd like you to think of something that you've purchased recently, let's say maybe pre-COVID, depending on what part of the world you're in, because you may have had restrictions since COVID. So let's say something that you purchased before COVID that was with the help of a salesperson. It could be like me, a piece of clothing. It could be a piece of technology like my husband, like my kids right now with a car, or as big as a house. It can be full range. The only requirement is that it's with the help of a salesperson. And if you can let me know that you've actually thought of what it is, if you can put a Y in the chat so that I know that you actually have got a actual product in mind that you've purchased, okay? Because I'm going to ask you a question in a moment for you to share your answer of where you were on your buying decision. So just say a Y for that you've chosen a particular item that you've purchased in the last year or so. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, great. I'm glad you've all picked one. Excellent. I'm seeing the Y's come in. Thank you. Awesome. And so now that you've got an item selected, my question to you is, before you spoke to the salesperson, what percentage of your buying decision was made or complete? Were you at 0 before you spoke to that salesperson? Were you at 75, 50, 75, or 100% of your buying decision? Wow, look at our numbers. We've got 75, 75, 90%. Ooh, we've got a 25%, 75, 50, 90, 100%, 75 to 100. All right, and 75, we've got more coming in, 75 to 100. And so notice that the majority of the group has got the majority of their buying decision complete. When I ask this question, we've got 75 to 100, we've got a 75, 85, and a 50%. When I typically ask this question of business audiences of varying sizes, thousands of people, and they choose a random thing that they purchased with the help of a salesperson, they typically say, 80% of the group or more say they're at 75% of their buying decision complete. The next largest group is 100%. And this is an important thing for us to keep in mind. Leads me to our next question, which is, where is your typical client on the spectrum of his or her buying decision before he or she speaks with you? All right, so think of a typical client. Where are they on the spectrum of their buying decision before they speak with you? All right, are they at a 25%, 0, 25, 50, 75, or 100%? And great, and let those answers come in. I'm loving it. So, and as we look at this is pivotal, because how we line up our business so that they come further along in their buying decision, so that by the time you're having the conversation with them, you have a shorter distance by which to take them, makes your job a lot easier. Okay, and this is so relevant with how do you end up in the boardroom, how you end up having that meeting and appointment set up is very important to the structure of your sales process. I'm loving what I'm seeing. So 50 and up, 75, 0 to 25, 50%, 75%, and 75%. So when we look at this, we're looking for their buying criteria, all right? In order to get to that 50 or 75%, they have a buying criteria that's already in their head. The neuroscience tells us that people make the decision to buy unconsciously first, and then it's when we're asking the questions. So it's these unconscious buying criteria that's real important for us to be aware of in our conversations with the people who we're selling to. And so we're looking at, what do they want more of? What do they want less of? What are they seeking? Okay, what are they moving towards? And what are they moving away from? What are they avoiding? And these things become, these buying criteria, become essential for you in terms of how you navigate your conversation. This morning I was coaching the leaders in the organization about their approach for their sales. Actually, it was a boardroom situation as well. And part of it was we needed to make really clear what is the buying criteria that they're using to make their decision on, because that becomes a key factor of how they design their presentation going forward. All right, so let's not put this in the context of what happens with a referral. All right. A few years back, I was given a referral to a doctor locally, and the person who referred me was a friend of mine who's a former medical general from another province. And so when he gave me this woman's contact information and said, this is the best doctor I could find in Toronto, you can imagine that when I picked up the phone to speak with her or speak with her staff in the office, I had a large portion of my buying decision complete. I was actually at 100% of my buying decision complete. There had to be something really wrong. I mean, I don't think there's anything that the staff in our office could have done that would have caused me to not reach out and not want to follow through in that first appointment. So what I'd like you to do is think about something, a professional service. It could be like me, a doctor. It could be an accountant. It could be a vet. It could be a realtor. It could be a chiropractor, a dentist, any kind of professional service that you were referred to, a financial planner, mortgage broker, any particular a professional service that you were referred to and you called the office, okay? I'd like to know, when you were given the referral, what percentage of your buying decision was complete? Were you at 0, 25, 50, 75, or 100% of your buying decision? So if you can put in the chat, where were you in your buying decision when you called that office with regards to the professional? Yes, we've got 95, 90, 100, 79, 75, 100, 100, 100, 90%. Great, 75. And 95%, great. And so as we look at this, typically the numbers shift when I ask this question. Usually 80% when I'm asking this question of business audiences, thousands of people, the typical answer that we get, 80% of the group or more, is at 100% of their buying decision complete. That makes your conversation so much easier, okay? Because they've had, you then are just talking about the logistics of making things happen. It makes it a very different kind of conversation. And so this is key as you're trying to get those conversations and to be in the boardroom, is that if you come via referral, you know that they're further along in that buying decision, which makes it that much easier for you when you are having the conversation, okay? I'm gonna share some statistics with you about actual referrals. And I think they may help you to understand this even more. So the lifetime value of a new referral client is 16% higher than a non-referred client. All right. And then each referred client gives an average of 2.86 referrals. And part of my business strategy for 20 years has been solidly based on referrals. And let's just take a look at this in greater detail. Let's round this down. So instead of 2.86, we'll say it's 2. And then let's just play this out. So let's say we got 5 non-referred clients. They're less likely to give referrals than if we had 5 referred clients. And then those 5 referred clients would refer each, on average, 2 clients, all right, which gives you much more business than you have on the left and more opportunity if it's internal. And then there's more referrals, and it grows and it grows and it grows. You know that I'm dating myself, you know, the old commercial where it said, and she told 2 friends, and she told 2 friends, and she told 2 friends. But it doesn't end there. Other piece of research shares that 84% of business-to-business decision makers start the buying process with a referral, whether that's internal or external. I want to just put that out there for because if you get referred from somebody internally and you're internal to the organization, that will open doors that much faster for you than if it's not. And let's just look at this if we had it on a an actual visual with it. So let's say this is our 100 people, all right? This would mean that of all of what that amount of business would represent, the ones that are still the darker blue are the number of potential clients that would be there out of that 100. So 84% that come via referral. So if you weren't using referrals as a means of getting introduced, then you're missing a major opportunity. All right, let's look at this through different means of getting business and looking at where people are in their buying decision. So if we were to look at cold calling, and generally people will, if you're really lucky, they'll be at 0, or if you're really lucky, they'll be at the 25% of their buying decision complete. It's one of the hardest ways to, how can you say, to open the door. It means you have a long way to take them in the conversation in terms of their buying decision, and it makes the focus of your conversation to create interest in what you have to offer. Whereas if they come from a website or something where they're, seeking it out themselves, then you're typically looking at 50 to 75% of their buying decision complete, which means you don't have as far, you're a little shorter, okay? And you're discovering their interest as a focus of your conversation. If they are coming as a referral, so that you get that introduction, whether it's internal or external, they're at the 75, but most of them will be at 100% or close to that 100%. And it makes the focus of your conversation very different. It's about confirming interest. It puts you both on the same side together, which is something that makes a big difference to the essence of that conversation. So it's not you're on two different sides, you're actually together working on making it happen, all right? So let's look at some research. I'm going to pull some pieces of research of different studies that have happened. Wharton School of Business, what they discovered is that the best decision makers have the greatest activation in the emotional centers of their brain. And you'll begin to see a pattern as I share this research. A group of neuroscientists from the United States discovered that when people choose their favorite brand, they have the greatest activation in the emotional centers of their brain. And then Paul Zak and DARPA, a research group, American research group, long story short, what they discovered is that when people donate to a charity by the measurement of blood chemistry, and brain chemistry, sorry, that they could actually determine how much money someone's going to donate based on how emotionally engaged they are, based on that brain chemistry, all right? So it's interesting that here we are, we've now got money attached to this, that people will actually give more money if they're emotionally engaged, all right? Then this is another group of neuroscientists. What they discovered from the United States, what they discovered is that when people choose to buy, the areas of the brain responsible for positive anticipation are activated. And would you not agree that positive anticipation is an emotion as well? From Duke University, what they discovered is that when someone is more emotionally engaged, they negotiate in a more win-win fashion, which is that not really the basis of fair exchange? And isn't that what we would love with the individual who we are negotiating a project or service with? And then we have the research of Mustata, which is a consumer research group. And what they discovered was that the more emotionally engaged someone is, the more likely they are to take action. And they took it further to look at specifically that people who are emotionally engaged will take they're 4 times more likely to buy, and I'm going to say buy your idea or whatever it is that you're offering. And then they also discovered that they're 2 times more likely to promote, all right? The more emotionally engaged someone is, they're 2 times more likely to promote. And I'm just going to put my language on it that I was using earlier and say 2 times more likely to refer. All right. And then finally, we have from University of Texas, what they discovered is that the decision to buy happens emotionally first, and then within seconds, our brain is going to the areas of the brain responsible for justifying that decision, the logic ones. So simple, short version that if you like to take notes, it's people buy on emotion, justified by logic. No matter who they are, no matter what industry they are in, whether they're male or female, it does not matter. This principle applies. And so what does this mean to our conversations? And what does this mean to the way in which we navigate our presentations? This is key, particularly when you have, a presentation to a boardroom or a high stakes presentation. What are you looking for? What are they emotionally engaged in most about that is connected to their buying criteria? All right. So, and I think that for you to be aware of that you're on the hunt for the buying criteria that the executive are most engaged in. That's what you're looking for.